Hey guys, today is Vlogmas Day 7. That's right, Day 7. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about how you need to decide if you're going to do a solo podcast or if you're going to choose to have a co-host. So there's some things to think about here, and one of them being, do you know somebody who's passionate about the same topics you are, or what you're going to start the show on? So for me, this is really easy because my co-host actually came to me and said, "Hey, you want to start a podcast?" So he's the one that made that decision for me. But we do need to decide if it's something that you're gonna have a co-host. Do you talk well alone? For me, that's one of the reasons that I'm doing Vlogmas 2022 is because I want to make sure that I'm able to do solo things. I'm not super great at talking by myself, just talking to the camera and, hoping that there's an audience out there. So for me, by default, I wanted to do a solo or a co-hosted show because I knew for me that meant that I was going to be able to have someone to chat with. It was going to be a lot more easy to do that than it was to try and do it on my own and talk about the topics that I wanted to talk about and make it engaging. So for me, I definitely wanted to, I wanted to be able to do that with a co-host. The other thing that you need to consider is not only can you talk alone and make your things engaging, but are you going to get along with your co-host all the time? Are you going to have the same values, the same recording schedule, the same things like that? Are you going to be able to getting frustrated if you can do a weekly show and your co-host commits to a weekly show, and then 6 months in, a year in, your co-host, due to life circumstances, can't do a co-host, can't record with you? Are you going to get frustrated when you can't put your podcast out as much as you want? So that's something that you need to consider. Just as are you guys going to get along always? Because it's going to be a breakup if you have to do it. You're going to either leave, and then you have to decide too, and you should have this in writing. If you guys do decide to do a co-host show, you should get in writing, okay, what happens if we decide to break up? Who owns the show? Do I own the show? Do I get to keep the show? Do I get to keep going on my own? What about anything that you guys may have bought together? Like if you bought equipment, like who gets to keep that? Especially like for my podcast, we actually have an LLC. We have a company now because we are taking in money from sponsors, and so we have to decide, like, okay, if we do break up and we're not co-hosts anymore, what happens to the show? So that's great to have that in writing. So those are just a few of the things that you should consider when you're deciding if you want to do a solo show or do a co-hosted show. And also, I would say if you're going to have a co-host, it's probably best to do maybe one other co-host, two co-hosts, so there's three people. Gets real hard, and especially if you're going to bring a guest in, then like how do you talk without making it like super jumbly with how do you know who's going to get to talk when? So those are just a few things you need to consider when thinking about having a co-host or being a solo podcaster.